In 1986, Judas Priest made what many people, including the band themselves, believe to be one of the biggest mistakes of their entire career. And all while releasing one of the best songs they've ever written.
Can you believe that?
Released on March 14th in 1986, the band's controversial Turbo's closing track was supposed to be the biggest hit of their entire career, yet instead to this very day remains to be absolutely ignored and forgotten by the band. So today, on our Defenders of the Faith series, let's take a look at the history of Reckless and then talk about why Judas Priest keep completely ignoring it for 40 years now. Here you go. 40 years ago, Judas Priest released their 10th studio album, Turbo, and with this album, the band had one very clear goal: to finally fully conquer the American market. At that time, glam metal, or hair metal, was in full swing in the United States. In order to do so, Priest decided to listen to their label and adjust their sound accordingly, shifting from their trademark aggressive heavy metal towards more commercial approach, doubling down on the usage of popular back then synthesizers, just like yet another band we know of, with a clear emphasis on more grounded subjects, rather than the typical sci-fi and fantasy-themed lyrics Judas Priest were always known for. And the result was, well, rather ambivalent. On one hand, Turbo sold very well, because yeah, no matter what you think about it, Turbo was a huge financial success, becoming one of Judas Priest's last platinum-era releases, reaching number 33 in the United Kingdom and number 17 on the Billboard 200, which was actually their highest position in the United States at that time. Yeah, even better than Screaming for Vengeance, and remained such all the way until 2005, when Judas Priest's reunion album Angel of Retribution topped that result. But on the other hand, if we're being very honest, and as much as I actually like this album, the response was far from universal, with rather mixed receptions from both critics and the band's die-hard fans, and even the subsequent live album Priest Live from their Fuelful Live tour did not sell as well as the band expected, reaching only gold status back then. But nonetheless, even if Turbo may not be a fan favorite for a vast majority of fans at the very least, yet this album opened a rather unexpected door for Judas Priest. Well, almost. And as I always say, you may talk crap about Turbo all you want, all the way until you hear the intro to Turbo Lover sounding live at a Judas Priest concert. Cause yeah, no one can stay indifferent to that one. As Judas Priest were finishing their recording sessions for Turbo, they were approached by nobody else but Warner Brothers with a major opportunity. The studio wanted them to be a part of the soundtrack for an upcoming movie, Top Gun, and not just as a small addition. They actually wanted the biggest heavy metal band on the planet at that time to provide a lead single for the movie. And as Glenn Tipton recalls, when Priest played the song Reckless to the Warner Brothers representatives, they immediately fell in love with it. And right there, pretty much on the spot, offered them for it to become the theme song of Top Gun. There was a slight problem. Warner Brothers wanted the exclusivity for the song and wanted Judas Priest to release it as a single, while Reckless was already aimed for the Turbo album. According to Glenn Tipton, by that point, Turbo was already finished, pressings were done, artwork completed, and everything was pretty much locked in. And Judas Priest simply did not want to pull the song from it at that point, partially because, as KK Downing later said, they felt the album flowed well as it was, and they didn't want to disrupt that. And partially because they actually thought that the movie idea was absolutely stupid and it would most likely be a big, gigantic flop. Yeah, little did they know.
Tom Cruise, Kelly McGillis. Top Gun.
And so Judas Priest naturally tried to offer the guys from Warner Brothers some of their other tracks, which, luckily enough, they actually had plenty of at that time. As just a reminder, the original idea for Turbo was to be released as a twin Turbo double album in honor of the band's 10th studio record. Yet this idea was of course rejected by CBS Records, of which we spoke quite extensively in our Turbo and Ram It Down episodes, but the fact remains, by 1986, Judas Priest had around 10 extra songs to choose from, some of which would later on make it on Ram It Down. Yet unfortunately, after hearing Reckless, none of them were good enough for Warner Brothers. And so the studio representatives tried to persuade Judas Priest by presenting what they thought was their secret weapon: the fact that they got Tom Cruise for the lead role. Yet there was a slight problem. That meant nothing for the band, as according to KK Downing, neither of the boys actually knew who Tom Cruise was at that time. And all Warner Brothers actually had to do was to say that Top Gun would feature yet another actor, Tom Skerritt. Because I mean, come on, by 1986, pretty much everyone knew Captain Dallas from that, nice 1979 movie about a fluffy animal from space.
I like to eat people from other planets, especially y'all. I like to eat you with my little mouth too.
But nevertheless, Warner Brothers did not want to settle for anything other than Reckless. And so by the end of the day, Judas Priest and the studio did not agree on the terms, which, as KK Downing, Glenn Tipton, Rob Halford, and pretty much everyone in the band later on agreed, was a huge mistake. Because you know what? Top Gun was a huge success, and having a lead song in such a movie would be a huge deal, even for such a major band as Judas Priest. As despite all odds, Top Gun became a massive hit and won a bunch of awards, including the Academy Award for, ironically, the best song, which of course was Take My Breath Away by New Wave legends Berlin. And yes, of course, it also became a major breakthrough for Tom Cruise, whom I'm more than sure Judas Priest know by now. And that failure to place a right bet actually had a pretty big impact on Judas Priest, resulting in them never turning down an opportunity to jump on the Hollywood bandwagon from then on. And 2 years later, Judas Priest finally did land on a movie soundtrack, when during the Ram It Down sessions they recorded a cover of Chuck Berry's classic Johnny Be Good, which was used for the 1988 comedy titled Johnny Be Good, starring Anthony Michael Hall, Uma Thurman, and Robert Downey Jr., with Judas Priest's rendition of the classic appearing as a part of the soundtrack alongside some other great rock and metal bands like Kix, Saga, Ted Nugent, Dirty Looks, and a bunch of others. But there was a slight problem. Unlike Top Gun, the Johnny Be Good movie was a complete financial failure, and to this very day it actually holds a 4.6 score on IMDb. In 1998, Judas Priest tried their luck once again, this time without Rob Halford in the band, when Judas Priest recorded the song Bloodstained, specifically for the horror slasher The Bride of Chucky soundtrack, which did do slightly better and got a 5.7 score on IMDb at the moment. Yet still did not become a major breakthrough, neither for Judas Priest nor for the Chucky franchise. And of course there were a bunch of other appearances of Judas Priest music in major cinemas, but the biggest problem still remains. Back in 1986, when Judas Priest were presented with a huge opportunity, unfortunately they decided to turn it down. And the song that could have and should have been a major mainstream hit all around the world, unfortunately got absolutely lost in the archives of heavy metal. Because here's the thing, despite Reckless being an absolute favorite of many Judas Priest fans, like including myself from the Turbo album, the band has completely ignored and pretty much rejected it for 40 years now. As after turning down the deal from Warner Brothers, they decided to not release it as a single, and instead bet on Turbo Lover, Locked In, and Parental Guidance, none of which, with the possible exception of Turbo Lover, are any superior to Reckless whatsoever. In addition to that, despite shooting a bunch of official videos for the Turbo songs, Judas Priest decided to not do that for Reckless. But most importantly, since it was released in 1986, Judas Priest have not performed Reckless even once live. Even once! Despite all of us die-hard Judas Priest fans begging the band to do that for decades.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And I actually think that it might be so because Reckless is a subtle reminder to Judas Priest that back in 1986, despite all my love for the band, and despite me, of course, defending Judas Priest no matter what, and at any fight, but if we're being very honest, the band simply failed to make the right judgment. And instead of fully commercializing the already commercial Turbo, buried one of the best songs they've ever written on that album. So I truly hope that this year, in 2026, in honor of the 40th anniversary of Turbo, Judas Priest will finally give justice to their forgotten masterpiece. And on the upcoming Faith Keepers run, we will finally hear the song which all of us diehard Judas Priest fans have been begging the band to perform live for 40 years now. But anyways, what do you guys personally think about Reckless, and would you like to hear it live at some point? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you still haven't done so, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!